This is the Ad hoc Harwich Port Committee. I'm calling it to order now, and I'm going to read, recording and taping notification as required by law. The town may audio or video record this meeting. Any person intending to either audio or video record this open session is required to inform the chair. First of all, we're going to do the old business. Anybody here familiar with the old business? I suspect there's a few. I have two letters here I've received from members of the public, which I will put into the record right now. One involves a letter from a Nancy Townsend. It's regarding 203 Bank Street, and also one from a Tim Drew, again, regarding 203 Bank Street and also the parking in the municipal lot downtown. I'm going to start immediately and get right to the issue. 203 Bank Street, which is known as the Harbor Master's Office, is off the table. It will not be used as we had currently discussed. We're going to be discussing the lot which is known as the TD Bank. I'm going to refer to it as the extension lot, but it's the lot that the town has control of in the municipal parking lot. So for those of you who are concerned about 203 Bank Street, the Harbor Master's Office, that is not going to be part of our discussion. Yes, please. Yeah, let me do this before we get too much further along, okay? What I'd like to do is, which I was remiss in not doing, I'd like to have the board, the committee, tell you who they are. And if we would, starting with my left, if Mike Ulrich would go ahead and just introduce yourself to everybody.
Michael Ulrich, Cape Cod Associates Real Estate.
John Mahan.
Al Donahue.
Cindy Williams, Executive Director of the Harwich Chamber.
Charlene Greenhalgh, Town Planner.
Just so you all know, Mike represents the businesses. John and I are members of the public. Cindy represents the chamber, and Charlene represents the planning board. That's who we are in relationship to this, and we're all volunteers up here.
Actually, I don't represent the planning board. I'm the town planner.
I'm sorry,
And
town planner.
I want to just clarify too, for the people that may not understand what a chamber is a resource for both residents, businesses, and visitors. So we're for all of you as well as the businesses. So I'm kind of like the middleman.
Middle woman.
Middle woman, if we're going that way. But just so everyone does understand what a chamber is as well.
So for those of you who attended the meeting that was canceled last week and who were quite patient, and I want to say thank you very much for your patience, but unfortunately we did not have a quorum and we could not have a meeting, and we understand people were very concerned and upset because you had to make plans to come back over here again.
This is why we didn't have a quorum. Excuse me.
I think I got it too. At this time, I'd like to open it to a little bit of public discussion with regard to 203 Bank Street. Yes, Mr. Town Manager.
No, actually, I have another question.
Okay, let me just make the statement first, and then,
I mean, if you want to clarify something.
that's what I was going to do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Christopher Clark, Town Administrator, Town of Harwich. I will be putting together a little report to the Board of Selectmen about the intentions of administration regarding the parking issues, so we can have some kind of coordination. So we are not intending on doing anything with 203 Bank Street in regards to parking. That will not be a recommendation that will be made. Last night at town meeting, a fairly lengthy town meeting, but we did have a discussion and a specific question came up. So I do want to just let people know, sometimes when you title things, you title it with an intent to kind of accomplish certain things. So we did have the demolition and parking improvements for 203 Bank Street. What the actual funding was to complete that, it was $60,000, which was voted last night, which is very good, was to complete two things. The first was that we had an environmental assessment done on the property, and we found that there was asbestos in the caulking in the windows and also asbestos in the tiles in the floor. So it was about $30,000 to remediate and remove the asbestos from the facility. It was then estimated to be an additional $30,000 to then demo that building and remove it. The reason why that's important is that when a town leaves a building just vacant, we have to obtain vacant building coverage, which is very expensive, and it also creates an attractive nuisance. So the $60,000, what that would do is clean up the environmental elements in the building itself, would demolish and have the building taken away, and because now we'll have just a concrete pad there, we probably, and this is where I think where I was going, rough that out or make that so it's safe, so people who drive in, they're not going to get tires punctured and so forth. So the $60,000 is to basically convert that site into a vacant site and have it be safe if people do happen to park in that area.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. If you would please just come up to the microphone.
I just have a procedural question. You say that 203 Bank Street is off the table. Does that mean that, and Mr. Clark may be able to answer this, the selectmen will not be voting to make that a parking lot? Because as I understand it, you make a recommendation to the selectmen, they vote on your recommendation, but they also probably have the authority to put something forth themselves that they would vote on. Is that correct?
Can I get your name?
I'm sorry, yes, Carla Burke on 200 Bank Street. Yeah, sorry. So I'm just curious to know if, what the procedure will be, because I understand you'll be making a recommendation to the selectmen. We were told that it might be on May 13th agenda for their meeting, and that, so my question is, can the selectmen either accept or not accept your recommendation? And if they do not accept it, or if in addition to that, can they themselves vote to make 203 Bank Street parking?
To address that, if I, just quickly, if you want to speak, go ahead, Mr. Manager, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, it's just a procedural question.
So there's probably two parts in terms of an answer to that. The first is the Board of Selectmen obviously formed you guys to get input on parking in Harwich Port, in Harwich area. You submitted a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen basically took it under advisement. They did not take any specific action directing anything. I did volunteer, which I had to, at some point, stop doing that, volunteering for things. Said I would come back with an administrative recommendation. So I've had discussions with the police department. So we will be making a recommendation on the 13th, at least administratively, of certain things that we're going to do. Part of those recommendations, part of the reason why I'm here today too, is to make sure we can kind of coordinate, is that we would not recommend 203 Bank Street for any parking for this time. In terms of 203 Bank Street in general, the town meeting did, I believe it was last year, authorize for the Board of Selectmen to dispose of that site as surplus property, and that the revenue from the sale of that was to be used to offset the cost of the harbor. So we have put together, the RFP was put together, very preliminary, very draft RFP was put together about a year ago, I believe about a year ago, 6 months to a year, to actually dispose of that site. The town meeting last year did indicate to have that site disposed and to have it go for conservation purposes. So what I had committed to the Board of Selectmen was that the first RFP that we put together would be an RFP that would direct to have the site sold for conservation-related purposes. If there's no takers on that, then I think that would open it up to potentially other uses such as housing or others. But I think we need to cross that bridge when we get to it. The first RFP would be specifically for related to the conservation piece. And just by process of law, I mean, the Board of Selectmen is the executive authority in the community, so I would propose different things to them, and they have to, as a board, as an executive board, decide which direction they want to go. So I make recommendations, they ultimately have to vote what direction they want to go in. As of this date, they have not made any final recommendations for me to follow up on specifically.
Thank you very much. Just to clarify what the manager has said, so you all understand, we are an ad hoc committee. All we do is make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. They are the ultimate authority. And our recommendation, as you all know, and that's why you're here, was because the use of 203 Bank Street. That has been removed by us, the ad hoc committee, and we're discussing the use of the property known as a TD Bank. Does anybody have any questions for this board or committee? Are you satisfied this has been clarified with the manager speaking and addressing this issue? Do you still have concerns regarding parking on Bank Street? And remember something, this ad hoc committee has nothing to do with traffic enforcement or anything else. That falls upon other departments within the town of Harwich. That is not our responsibility, nor are we going to address that aspect. So, do we have any members of the public who would like to step forward and discuss anything at this moment? Please, would you kindly identify yourself?
Hi, good morning. Barbara Piantadosi, Bank Street.
Can you please write your name down? Nobody's signing in.
Sure.
And I don't want to butcher your name.
Most people do, but that's okay. I'm here because my husband had to be off Cape today, and he applied to be on this committee and hasn't heard anything. I wonder if you could let me know when you will be getting back to the people that applied to be on the committee?
Do you want me to speak to that? This committee doesn't appoint the members. It's a subcommittee of the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
So that needs to be addressed to administration and the selectmen.
Mr. Manager, would you please?
Intending on getting out so much,
You've been doing a great job.
especially after last night was a long night.
I know, that's why I'm not sitting. It was a long night.
Just in terms of, I have had at least a conversation with the way the Board of Selectmen works, obviously 5 members. 2 of them form a interview committee. One of the 2 had indicated to me that several people had applied. And again, I just work for the board, so this is the board in operation. That the two members of the interview committee said that several people applied before the charge or the committee was ever formed. They decided not to take those applications under consideration. They didn't think it made sense for people to apply to a board that didn't have a charge, didn't have a purpose. So they were only going to consider applications for people that submitted their materials after the board was formed. In terms of the process, the way we do it in administration, and this does fall to myself and really to my secretary, we have a letter of interest that people submit, and then Sandy takes those letters and forwards them to the 2 members of the interview committee. The interview committee advises us who they want to interview, and then we arrange for those interviews. So the 2 members of the interview committee would be Selectman Don Howell and Selectman Michael McCaskill. So if there are specific questions about you had your application in after the fact and why you weren't considered, I would really refer folks specifically to them. I would point out that there may have been 15 people that applied for 2 spots, and sometimes you have to weed through and get to only the 2 that you need. So you sometimes have more interest than you have spots, so not everybody would be considered.
There are 2 vacancies on this.
There's 2 vacancies now, but. So I would, if you had a resume that you think you submitted 2 months ago or whatever, I'd put another one in to make sure that you're up to date.
All right, thank you. Does anybody have any further questions for Mr. Manager? Having seen none, again, thank you. All right, are there any other members of the public who would like to address the ad hoc committee. Yes, would you come up, write your name down if you would.
Sure. My name is Richard Kendall.
And Miladin Terziski.
You a tag team match or?
We are. So this is kind of just food for thought for the future for parking, I guess, in Harwich Port. We've had some ideas, kind of reviewed the studies and seen what the town has done already. We operate a company called Chatham Valet in Chatham, and we partnered with the town last year for a pilot program to park vehicles, paid parking program. So we have a parking fee we charge people to park, and if we need to valet the cars, arrange them in a way due to the traffic in the lot. So if, you're welcome to call on us for any sort of, we like to try to amend to all parties, abutters, whoever else is in. I think our program in Chatham where we use low-speed vehicles, which are basically street-legal golf carts to move people around between areas of interest and parking.
Thank you very much. I would only, and I know I'll bring something to your attention you don't know, but if this were the use of, using your business, it would have to go to an RFP, which means
We are aware of that.
apply as and has to open up to the general business community public to apply for this. But I just want to say thank you very much for that presentation. We hadn't specifically, we know of you. Okay.
And maybe the question is, if there's a private lot somewhere, would the town be open to, and the committee, of course, to have this kind of service here in Harwich Port?
Let me turn this over to Cindy Williams of the Chamber of Commerce.
Hey, Cindy.
I think you know who she is, so consequently, she's probably more qualified to respond.
So thank you again. When we first started coming up with recommendations, we were trying to do it in a way, because we didn't have anyone that was going to be able to finance it this year, wanting to solve the problem to a degree this year. So as Al mentioned, we would at some point, if this is the road that when we let everyone know what we're thinking for our recommendation for next week, this year we're trying, especially after sitting through the first night of our town meeting last night, trying not to have anyone have to spend any money. We're trying to do the fiscally responsible thing, as well as trying to help move some cars a little, to just try a test this summer to see what's happening. And if we are going in the right direction, that may be what we try. But not to say that later down the road, that as we continue to grow the town, and this is a town of 7 villages, that there may not be that option somewhere down the line. So I don't know if that helped.
That means, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, just part of our plan is we pay the town money to operate, so there is no out-of-pocket other than just the use of property, private property. We would have to make those arrangements and make it a financially viable thing, and it might be able to work out.
What Cindy had said is, we as a committee have discussed this in the past. This whole process, and I think if folks remember, I've said this in the past, we all have, this is a process. And consequently, what we're attempting to do at this time, make the most viable, inexpensive means by which to solve a problem of parking in this community short term. As the town moves along in future months, years, and the expansion of this entire type of a program, it may take on an entirely different appearance. We may be looking at some point to clearly speak with folks who do have a valet system. Also, and I want people to recall, we do have a bus service in this community as well. So there are some other viable means by which to move people around. However, again, this is a slower process than some of you would like to see, but it also is one that's being looked at regarding how cost effective it can be for this community at this time, okay? Do we have anything else with regard to that? Thank you very much, and,
Thank you.
Hold on.
yes, okay.
Carla Burke again. I just
Please.
have another procedural question. So you're asking if anybody has input to this point. When you, later in the meeting, when you discuss the other options and recommendations that you're going to be making to the selectmen, will those of us in the audience have an opportunity to provide, ask questions or provide comments as well? Or is this just now?
Absolutely, no, we have an idea, and certainly all the public views
Okay.
can help with that, so
All
certainly.
right. I just wasn't sure if this was what was known as like public comment time and that we
Yes,
would know.
and
So later on, we would be able to say something as well.
so basically, and again, thank you again for your input, and it'll be, I'm sure you will have an opportunity again
Thank you.
to speak to it. So what we've touched upon our old business, which was a presentation to the Board of Selectmen. That's pretty much the reason why most of you have come, as a result of that. Our new business is, and I've mentioned it 2 or 3 times now, it has to do with the TD Bank lot, which has approximately 30 cars that will be, slots be designated for town, for employees of the businesses downtown. Now, we will probably discuss that a little bit more, but also get some of the thoughts from the committee where this may go in the future, because as you may or may not be aware, this committee is going to remain operational in the future. So it has taken on sort of a life of its own.
Point of order, are we doing the update on staff level discussion and possible new recommendations first? As the note taker, I just need to know what direction we're going.
All right, we'll do that with, let's go to that right now. You're referring to the recommendation to increase the members of the board, is that what you're referring to?
No, there was a staff level meeting last week, which I was sick for that too.
Oh.
I'm sorry, yeah.
It's like staff level, what staff?
That's
Not
what I-
staff,
yeah.
okay.
That would be
Yes. So, thank you, Charlene.
You're
So
welcome.
I had the pleasure last week, Charlene was going to join us, but she was out sick. I had the pleasure of sitting in on a meeting with a representative from the Cape Cod Commission, our town administrator, Mr. Clark, our deputy chief, Kevin Considine, and our DPW director, Lynn Cooper, to discuss the parking. And then we had hoped to discuss that last week. But what was discussed and seems to be a viable idea and has come up of various Harwich Port meetings I've had with many of our members, to have the universal sign of the P. I'm going to show it, but I know you're not going to be able to see it. But that giant P that everyone knows when you are driving along anywhere in the country, you see a P, you know that that's going to be public parking coming up or in that specific area. So on Route 28, either you'll see it coming through from Dennis or from Chatham, you'll see a P in that lot pointing in. On the back side, because people come in both sides, on the Pleasant Street side, you'll also see 2 Ps. That'll then alert people that there is public parking, so they're aware of that. And then also, there'll be those 4 signs, and I'm just reading my notes so I don't forget anything. It's going to be, as I've mentioned on numerous occasions, it's going to be an education process this summer. The Chamber puts out a walking map for Harwich Port. On that, we're also going to provide locations where there will be public parking, both daytime, and then one of the other things that we've secured from some of our committee meetings, from various people that have had some great ideas from the public, to have shared parking. And after 5 o'clock, both TD Bank and Cape Cod 5 have agreed to let us promote on this walking map that there is that aspect available as well. So those 2 options, or those 2 things we're thinking of, as well as 2 of the elements that are in the parking challenge in the lot were employee parking, as well as beach parking for people that, you know, as residents, we get a wonderful price for having a beach sticker, okay? Even our visitors get to have a sticker at a price. Over the years, people have been used to using that parking lot to just kind of park there, traipse down. Well, we're really trying to alleviate some of that so that the businesses that are there, the restaurants, the galleries, the shops, can have customers come into town and have a place to visit throughout the town. So one of the other things that came out of the meeting last week was from the Cape Cod Commission that, yes, you can have a sign that says no beach parking. So the parking signs that we'll have on either side, so people know that's the public parking, as well as signage that says no beach parking. With moving the employees to that side lot that Mr. Donahue has referenced a couple of times, there are 30 spots there. As many of you have heard me say on a regular basis, I'm in my office between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. I see that there is about that many people that are parking employee-wise. So we're just going to kind of take the lot, move the cars into the side lot, and then that's going to open up and try to help fix some of this. This year, we really, and at one of the selectmen's meetings, they discussed possibly not doing anything this year. We want to try something. So this is almost like, as Mr. Clark said, in the short term, we're going to do a test this summer. Try doing this, moving the cars from the employees into the side lot, having all the signage, and see how that works. As we continue our adventure on this committee, we may find from all of you and people that, all right, well, did you think of this too? And it's kind of going to be a couple of trial and error things that we try as we go through this process, so.
Thank you. Cindy pretty much put this thing into a very good perspective. The major changes, just to reiterate what she said, no beach parking in the municipal lot. There was a discussion by some members of the public relative to a 2-hour minimum that we had proposed, and somebody was talking about how to enforce that 2-hour minimum. Well, that is currently off the table as well. And because we have the authority in this community, the town has the authority to put no beach parking on the lot. As Cindy indicated, this is going to be a test run, to see how that goes. And I feel like I'm parroting exactly what she said, but I just want to make it clear that that is the route in which we are going towards the recommendation for the selectmen. And again, it'll be a process. This will be a learning year for everybody. See how this no parking goes with the community downtown, meaning the business community. See what their reactions are, gauge what they look at, how they feel about it, gauge how it works out with the employees. Is this additional parking lot, which is the TD Bank lot, going to be a viable temporary solution to this issue? The season's going to go on into next season, and we will probably be back here again, and I know we will be, discussing what future steps the community can take in order to offset the concerns that you, the public, have. All right, anybody else? Go ahead, John.
Clarify a few things, Mr. Chair. So everybody is perfectly clear. We keep saying the TD lot. It is not the lot directly behind TD Bank. It's the lot that's accessible off the community lot. Okay, so it's not off of behind TD Bank. It's off the Chamber lot. And the reason I think we're looking at that lot is because that appears, from what I hear, and correct me if I'm wrong, that lot we feel is underutilized at this point. So if we can take some of the center employee parking and move them to the underutilized lot, it will open up more spaces. So just to be clear on that, which TD lot we're talking about.
Exactly, and underutilized being that other than on a Wednesday night and maybe on a Friday, Saturday dinner time, that lot really truly isn't used as much as it should be because people don't realize that that really is a parking lot. Until last year when the DPW actually put a sign up for us, public parking. So this year, looking at everything and hearing from everyone, both, the residents and the businesses, we needed to try something to just try to help everyone. And so that's why, that one being that, my conversation has always been, there's about 30 cars that are being, using the public lot. Well, move those 30 to a location that has 30, so then we can then open up those. So yes, that is to clarify.
All right, thank you. Does, Mike, do you have anything to,
I believe Mr. Porter has something.
oh, Mr. Porter, please, step up.
Ralph Porter from 15 Pleasant Street. So there will be no limit on the parking time? There will not be a 2-hour limit?
So unfortunately, what we heard during the selectmen's meeting, and just clarify, Mr. Clark, with me, due to regulations, we can't change that, and we can't, at this year, we wouldn't be able to monitor it and enforce it. So we would need to go through and the bylaw process, I believe, and fix that so that you can do both those things.
Well, I certainly would agree that if it's not monitored, it isn't of any value at all.
Right.
But I had hoped that that would help to keep things moving a little bit. There's a major problem, as you know, with people coming in and not being able to find a place to park. The TD lot is a big help when people know it's there. Even the sign that's there now is not awfully obvious when you come in, and I think that that's part of it. I kind of hate to see the employees all parking in there and taking up the spaces, but those are just comments I felt like I needed to make. It's still a real problem down there, and when I presented the thoughts I had the first time that I met with you, there was a response to it that there had never been any problems. They had never had any calls about anything. So I think one of the things I'm going to suggest to my neighbors is that if they see a problem, they should call and let them know. I mean, better we should do that than wait until somebody gets hit while they're poking around looking for a parking space.
Absolutely, and all of this is a growing pains that we're going to go through together, figure out some of that, because it is important that it works for everybody.
Right. Well, I'm very glad that you're going to continue to exist, and I'll continue to put my Tuesday mornings aside. But I think that I hope that when you're going to continue, that you'll be continuing right along. I think part of the problem this year was it was a little bit late getting started. And if it had started back in the fall, I think we would have maybe been able to accomplish a little bit more. But, it's now in existence, and hopefully we'll be continuing to do this. Thank you.
I'd like to acknowledge Mr. Porter. He has been here every single meeting we have held, and he has been a tremendous asset representing the public. And I wish we had no, he wasn't the only one. We had several people come in, but people started showing up when the controversy kind of exploded. But what we need is people like Mr. Porter, who has been very, very helpful in providing information to this board.
Relating to that, one of the reasons why I know I did not attend meetings prior to this, and will not be able to attend probably your next few meetings, and maybe all of them, is that they're at 10:30 on a workday. And I had asked, when I came last week, the meeting that was canceled, I'd spoken to ask if it could be on the agenda at this meeting to have a discussion and a vote to have the meetings moved to an early evening. And I know Cindy had said perhaps, every other one or whatever, but you are not going to get people like myself and other people who are interested coming to your every meeting if that means they're at 10:30 during a workday. So please put that on the agenda. I won't be here next week probably to put my 2 cents in, but I'll do it now. If you want more participation, you need to be able to reach a wider audience. And so having meetings as a lot of the other committees do in town, at, say, 6:30 in the evening, you'll get more people, or different people as well. So please put that on the agenda. Please consider changing at least some of your votes. I know I watch them on YouTube, your meetings, that they're taped, but it's not the same thing as being able to be here when you have them. So I'd appreciate it if you consider that. Thank you.
Thank you.
No,
Um,
future agenda.
Okay, future agenda.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, it's on the schedule next meeting.
Yeah, that next meeting, yes. We will address that next meeting, all right, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Mary DeBlois, and I live on Bank Street. Just two things. I wondered, what is your plan to enforce the no beach parking in the town?
I missed it.
And secondly, I wondered if you would also put on the table some way to put a moratorium on the town bylaw that allows commercial businesses to just say, oh, we have municipal parking within 300 feet, so we don't have to worry about parking. There's a point where I think the town maxes out in how much it can handle with the parking spaces that they have. So I think that there should be a moratorium on that bylaw, which perhaps will lend a little urgency to this matter, so that it can be studied, because if the businesses just plan to use municipal parking, we've hit that wall, so that it really needs to be stopped, and we really have to look at it.
Can I get your name again? I'm sorry, I missed it.
I'll put it down, Mary DeBlois.
Did you write it? Thank you.
I am writing it clearly. Okay, thank you.
I just-
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll address that again. We've talked about that, and you're absolutely right. There has been a discussion regarding business community using the municipal parking lot for their customer parking. It's a difficult area. And I know it's been brought up before, not to beat a dead horse, but it is a municipal lot. The purposes of that lot is the municipality. And I understand what you mean when it appears to be abused by some within the business community. However, we will talk about that at our next meeting, come up with some ideas which may expand upon what our current,
If I can interject just for, can we have maybe Charlene, who is the town planner, maybe kind of touch on how that all works without,
Yeah, the way the zoning and it is a zoning bylaw, so any changes, including a moratorium to a zoning bylaw, do have to go through a vetted public hearing process. It needs to be sponsored. So the next available time, unless there's a special town meeting this fall, will be this time next year for a moratorium. The way the bylaw's written now is if you are within 300 feet of any municipal lot, you can count that towards your parking needs. There are a number of businesses, particularly in Harwich Port, that do utilize the town parking lot for their parking. There are way more. We did a quick down and dirty study probably a year ago to look at what uses and what approved site plans down in that area are utilizing. And you're absolutely right. The number of parking spaces that businesses are calling on for the municipal lot far exceed the number of parking spaces that the lot does, have room for. Granted, some of those uses are offset. If you have a retail use, you may be open in the morning and close at 5, and restaurants, there are some that don't open until dinner time. So there is some offset. We didn't look at hours of operation, but it is tight down there. There's no question about that.
thank you, Sean. All right, any other further discussion within the public? Mr. Manager?
I just want to, maybe you should have it on a future agenda. I know we had a little bit of a discussion. I get concerned when we say, specifically no beach parking and such. There's better ways in which you can try to effectuate people's activities. One way to do it, and this is where we had a discussion, is we can restrict parking. We just have a parking regulation that needs to be a recommendation to the selectmen, and we need to have a public hearing and then change that regulation. So if you wanted to have in that lot, and I think this is a great opportunity for you guys, to look what section of that lot should be for 3 hours, with the idea that now someone has a chance to go out to eat, they have a chance to shop, and they have a chance to get back to their cars. And then what section of the lot, perhaps the TD Bank section, that you want to have for longer-term parking for employees, and that you'd want to have for maybe 10 hours or 8 hours or, something. But I think you want to kind of do that with the auspice that if somebody goes, you want to make it a disincentive for them to park and then walk to the beach and try to walk back within 3 hours. So that's the way you do it. And then, quite honestly, that becomes more legally enforceable for us to be able to then go out and enforce and get that turnover, which I think is what folks are talking about. So there is a process that we just need to follow to have that be effectuated. And I don't want to give people the thought that we're going to be just going out, and if you have your, beach paraphernalia, you're automatically going to get a ticket. I don't think that we can actually really do that. So we have to do that from a perspective of setting the hours. In terms of the enforcement too, I know Mr. Mahan kind of wears two hats where he's also on the Recreation Commission. I think it makes some sense to have kind of a wayfarer's map or wayfinder's map. I think that was what the gentleman too had recommended from the commission, of letting people know when they pick up and get a beach permit that they know where the appropriate parking is for the various beaches that we have. We do have some beaches that have underutilized parking lots. I'm thinking Earl Road is a nice parking facility that we probably could have some additional capacity. And if people get their pass, then have that be out there. And instead of having tickets on cars that people have the beach paraphernalia, maybe the recreation, we have two and a half.
1.5.
1.5. Not a half person, just half time, just to make sure I point that out. But have them go around, and instead of issuing tickets, just put flyers on to let people know where they should be parking, and then we can do the enforcement. But I would encourage, it's probably going to be 30 to 60 days before we can get a hearing with the selectmen to change the parking regulations. But the first thing is, you got to decide what you want, and then we got to put the regulations together to get that process started. Thank you.
I'm confused.
Yeah.
The town administrator spoke to limiting parking to hours. I thought that was off the table. Is it back? I've missed a couple meetings, so I'm not sure where we're at this point. But I'm confused.
We did, that's what part of this discussion for today was, relative to not getting involved in a 2-hour minimum. Putting the sign up that was, say, no parking, no beach parking. The purpose of that was to see how that works in lessening the number of cars that come into the lot, and then hopefully opening up those parking spaces, as was been indicated, for the daytime shopping and dinner hours for the restaurants. We didn't feel as though the 2-hour, and again, Mr. Porter brought it up, we're not talking about enforcing it because we had no punitive sanction with regard to that. And that was taken off because there was a discussion in which it felt as though, and Mr. Porter being one, of course, was that it was unenforceable, and what good was it going to do? So the no beach parking portion of this was added in hopes that it would, again, there's a learning curve on this thing, to see how effective, if effective at all, it was going to be. And as we move forward as a committee to address these in the future, how we can grow this. Yes, Mr. Minahan.
And again, correct me if I'm wrong, I think this is off the table for this year
Right.
because of the fact we have to make the bylaw change to make it enforceable.
Right.
I don't think it's off the table in general. Is
No.
that correct?
Right, so this is for this season, in order to have a short-term plan, we would like to make a recommendation, next Monday night at the Selectmen's meeting for what we were talking, without the limit this year. See how this works, this recommendation that we brought up this morning, see if this works. If not, there may be something through the next year that the committee finds from hearing from everyone that we might have to do a limit. But again, this year would be not to do a limit, do all the signage, and then the wayfinding maps that the chamber will do. We'll have some big posters down at the chamber. Starting, I think it's June 11th or 12th, I'll start selling beach stickers 7 days a week. And we'll make sure that we, down there, have all the signage, have all the brochures, that have all the spots for the parking, and then make sure that all of our volunteers that I have down at the visitor center also have a script, so that when someone comes in that's used to parking there and sees that there's a no beach parking sign, they can then suggest some of our other beaches and ponds. We've got 21, in case anyone didn't know that we have that many, we do. And then we'll just kind of funnel it out and hope that everyone gets to experience all of them. But this, again, is a learning thing, and we're gonna try something, because we wanted to. We got together on this committee because we wanted to start to find some kind of a solution. So that's what we're going to hopefully recommend. And Mr. Cohen?
Ms. Cohen, how are you?
Bob Cohen, Pleasant Street. Just an opinion. I got a feeling from what I've seen, or what I feel about beach parking signs, no beach parking signs. I think they work. I think it's a really small percentage of people who are going to see no beach parking and then plunk down there. I think it's a really small percentage. My across the street neighbor works at the little library down at the bottom of Bank Street. They've got lots of no beach parking signs. They don't have beach parking problems. What they do have is employee parking from Ember. So that's just my two cents. I do have some concern about how to enforce the employee parking area.
So,
and I don't know if it's tagged or how that works.
So one of the things that I'll do shortly after hopefully getting the blessing next Monday night is get an email out to all of the Harwich Port businesses that are members of the chamber, let them know that hopefully we've come up with an idea, but this is what we would like them to do with their employee parking, is that side lot. I believe, and in our meeting last week, we were talking about having a sign that said employee parking, but we were going to try the email first to get that word out to everyone. And then I'll also call all the businesses and let them know this is where the employees park. There are 30 spots, not the center. If they aren't using that side lot, please make sure you've found other parking for them.
So maybe not this year, but in the future, maybe stickers for them? Okay.
Absolutely. There's so many things we can go with this. A tag in the window, absolutely. And Mr. Cohen was also one of the other gentlemen that came to us with Mr. Porter over the time that we were doing this adventure together, and had some great ideas as well. So again, as Mr. Donahue and the committee have said, it takes a village, and we're all here together, all of you that have come out today, to solve this. So again, thank you for that.
Just a quick question. Quick question. I like this idea. Has anyone looked into the fact, is it legal to put up that sign, no beach parking, given that it's a municipal parking
Yes,
lot?
actually, that actually came out of the meeting that I was lucky to attend last week with the Cape Cod Commission, and he actually gave us that yes, it was okay. Other towns do that as well.
Okay, so the town won't, no one's going to sue the town or anything over this? Okay, just thought I'd ask.
Someone that's in the room and has been very, very quiet, but I think maybe should just maybe jump in if he doesn't mind, is our Deputy Chief Considine, to just, they're also a great partner with us on this. And so if you don't mind, Deputy Chief?
Kevin Considine, Deputy Chief of Police. Again, I can't add anything more than what Cindy just said with our meeting last week with the town administrator. From what Carla just said, those signs we can put up. And I agree with the crowd here. I think they do work for the majority. I think if somebody does read signs, not everybody. And as far as the enforcement piece goes, we had long discussions about that. And that is a lot of work to put in place, which obviously won't happen this summer, but it's doable. If that is where this committee and the selectmen are going to go in the future, I think, from our perspective, that might be the option to get these cars moving. And the 3-hour limit definitely does seem the way to go with that and give people opportunity to shop or dine or whatever they need to do. So if there's any other questions.
No, thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for your input. All right. Have we covered pretty much what we were going to cover with regard to this? Let me just check the agenda.
Who is writing whatever is being written and going before the selectmen on Monday night? I do not have that time.
Alan, I can type something up.
We're going down. Yes.
Mr. Donahue, you and I can type something up and email it over to the
And,
other.
and what exactly have we decided? I think we need a kind of
Side lot.
A vote.
well,
I mean,
Why not?
kind of
Yeah.
a punch list
Yep.
of,
Well, what we're going to be recommending, by the sounds of I think we've agreed so far, that the signage for no parking, beach parking, is going to be part of the recommendation. The recommendation is going to be for the use of the extension TD Bank parking lot, which consists of approximately 30 parking spaces. The signage that will appear on 28, both west and east of the community, with the International P parking to designate it. That will also be placed on the Pleasant Street side of the parking lot as well. The other recommendation is going to be the, what was the other recommendation?
Yeah, the chamber will be providing Wayfair
Wayfair.
maps.
is that a recommendation or is that something you're gonna do anyway? I
Do
mean,
we need
that's-
to put that in it?
I
Because it has
still have
nothing to do with
I
the
don't
town
think that has
itself,
anything
does
to
it?
do with,
Okay.
yeah.
So, yeah.
The recommendation, of course, is that the 203 is off. You already recognize that. Beyond that, the recommendation is going to be relatively brief, hopefully to the point. And because, and I hate to keep beating this thing to death, but this is the first step in a process. And we will, as a community, learn how well the no parking for the beach signs work. And if they do help us, as Mr. Cohn has said, I think it's going to be beneficial. We're going to have to look at future parking for this community, because again, we are very fortunate that the community is growing. This business community is growing. This is going to be an ongoing process. We may have to make recommendations for various locations that might be viable for parking, but it might require some type of transportation system to be involved in it. One thing that the manager, I think, alluded to was parking such as down at utilizing Earl Road Beach. That is an option, but I can almost assure you, unequivocally, if it does come up as an option and we discuss it, the room is going to be packed all over again with regard to folks who live in the vicinity of Earl Road Beach.
Just the existing part, no expansion.
No, there's no expansion. We don't use that word. No. We don't use that word. No, the existing parking. No. Did I happen to give the hint that I was moving towards? No. For those who know me here, no, that was not my idea at all, or anybody else's here. So again, that appears to me, that's what our recommendation is going to be for the selectmen on the 13th. Do I have any consensus with regard to those folks in the community who are here and have listened to this? We are looking for input. And I want to thank you for your input, because you've been extremely helpful. but we would like to see the continued input, because this is not a solution that's going to be done by these 5 or 7 people who will eventually be on here. The public is an asset, and we do appreciate when you come in and give us, we may not all agree on everything, there's no question about that. But having your input is of a tremendous benefit to all of us. And I'm sure the manager himself is glad to hear the public come in and speak to these issues. The chief is as well, because it gives them a sense as to where we are all going. And I hope I know where I'm going on this. But in any event, do I have any other conversation from the neighbors?
Seeing none.
On that, I will make a motion to close the public hearing.
There is no public hearing.
Public comment.
Public comment, I'm sorry. I have to get the proper term here. Thank you, Charlene.
You're welcome. You do have meeting minutes to approve.
Yeah, that's right, too. All right, getting back to our agenda, I need a vote for the meeting, the minutes of the meeting of our, meeting of April, what was it?
April 1st.
April 1st.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. All right.
You
We need to vote, Al.
Need a vote, okay, we need to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Abstained,
Abstain, none?
abstained.
One abstained, okay, that's you, you weren't here. But, all right. Make a motion that the,
Our next meeting date.
okay, our next meeting date is going to be,
April 13th will be at the Selectmen.
yeah,
Hopefully it's May.
May 15th, I'm sorry.
That's a long wait.
Sorry, it was a late night.
okay, May 13th, we'll get this, so we're gonna have our next meeting,
Probably want to do the following week to just reconvene.
21st.
So the 21st of May.
all right,
I have a department head meeting.
we can't reschedule?
Town administrator just left, so
What time is that?
I can try and get here for 10:30. Any excuse to get out of a department head meeting early is always a good one.
Since we have not had our meeting on the agenda to alternate, let's stick with our 10:30, and then we can
Yeah.
discuss it at that meeting.
Yep,
Excuse me.
So that'll be May 21,
yep,
10:30 a.m.
yes.
And Carla, in case you didn't hear me, we, at that time, because I was choking over here,
Don't
we're
die
gonna
on
have
us.
on our agenda that time to then see, have a discussion about changing or alternating the meeting times. Okay.
As I said, I will not be able to attend, so will you just, I can email this to the committee chair, just my thoughts, that it should be,
No one can hear what Carla's saying, I'm sorry.
She has to come up.
Would you?
Sorry,
please-
Carla.
that's okay. No, I am not gonna be able to, I can't reschedule, rearrange my work schedule anymore. The library's been very lenient about this. So I would just ask, because I won't be able to attend that meeting, that your committee consider changing your meeting times to an evening, say 6 or 6:30 or whatever, as other committees meet. And if not everyone, at least every other one, or, sometime, because you're gonna find that you're gonna get other people that cannot attend a meeting during the day. And I think it's important that you include the population in town that is in the workforce. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn,
So moved.
second.
Second. Whichever.
Aye.
The vote is unanimous.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.